LaMelo Ball didn't enter the NBA quietly. He arrived with noise, expectation, and a spotlight brighter than anything most young players ever face. But the remarkable thing wasn't that he handled it, it was that he grew through it, shaping himself into one of the most unpredictable, creative, and electrifying point guards of his generation. LaMelo didn't just bring talent, he brought a style, something rare, something loose yet controlled, something chaotic yet calculated. And as the seasons passed, that style began to feel less like a show and more like a weapon. What makes LaMelo different isn't just the flair, it's the way his mind sees the floor. Plays form in his imagination before they exist in reality. Passing windows that look invisible to everyone else open for him like he's playing in slow motion. His feel for pace, his instinct for angles, his understanding of where teammates will be, not where they are, gives him a kind of offensive gravity few guards possess. Defenders can't predict him. Coaches can't scheme him out. Teams can't rush him. LaMelo plays with a rhythm that belongs only to him, and the league has had to adjust. His early years in Charlotte revealed the full scope of his potential: the confidence, the shot creation, the transition instincts, the creativity with the ball. But underneath all the flash was discipline, the kind of discipline that never gets noticed because it hides behind highlight passes and deep threes. LaMelo studied film constantly. He memorized defender habits. He improved his handle, tightened his shooting mechanics, sharpened his timing. His growth wasn't loud, but it was constant. And every season, he added a new layer. But it was during the 2025-26 stretch where everything began to crystallize. The Hornets finally built a roster with balance, shooters around him, a big who could anchor the paint, wings who ran lanes with purpose. And with that structure, LaMelo's game opened like a floodgate. His scoring improved, not wild, not reckless, but controlled. His step-back three became a real weapon. His floater game became smoother. His finishing angles grew more creative, and his efficiency began to rise slowly, steady, quietly. The league noticed first in his pacing. LaMelo stopped rushing possessions. He started dictating them. He used tempo the way veteran stars use strength. Push when the defense isn't ready. Slow when the defense is set. Attack when the mismatch appears. Reset when the spacing breaks. He understood how to stretch a possession until it reached the exact moment to strike. And once he reached that point, the entire floor bent to his creativity. Mid-season, he delivered a run that changed the national conversation around him. 30-point games paired with double-digit assists, near triple-doubles that felt effortless, late-game control that stunned analysts. He was no longer just a highlight generator. He was a floor general with a blueprint. The Hornets, a team long stuck in the shadows, began playing like a group that believed in something bigger. They trusted LaMelo. They followed his rhythm, mirrored his confidence, and found identity through his energy. One game in particular became the turning point. A road matchup against a seasoned playoff team, the kind of environment young stars struggle in. The crowd hostile, the defense physical, the stakes high. But LaMelo walked onto the court with the same loose shoulders, the same relaxed dribble, the same quiet swagger he always carried. And then he picked apart the opponent without intimidation. A behind-the-back dime in transition, a step-back three over a closeout, a floater over a collapsing defense, a no-look pass threaded between two defenders. And in the fourth quarter, with the game tied, LaMelo orchestrated a six-possession stretch that felt like a statement. He called for screens with purpose. He attacked mismatches. He read the weak side rotation and punished it repeatedly. And when the defense stopped everything else, he hit a deep pull-up that silenced the arena. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't luck. It was the calm execution of a player who finally understood he was the engine of a franchise. But what made LaMelo's leap truly special was the growth on the other end of the floor. Defense had always been the biggest question around him. Would he commit? Would he mature? Would he anchor the team instead of being a liability? And in part two of his rise, the answer became clearer each week. LaMelo started rotating earlier. He used his length to disrupt lanes. He contested shots with disciplined closeouts. He communicated more. He stopped taking possessions off. He began to feel the defensive rhythm of games with the same instinct he used offensively. Teammates noticed. Coaches praised his improvement. Analysts acknowledged it. The league, slowly but surely realized that LaMelo was no longer a one-sided star. The Hornets' defense tightened whenever he locked in because his energy was contagious. His hands were active, his feet moved with intention, and his understanding of spacing, so elite on offense, translated to anticipation on defense. But the most impressive part of LaMelo's evolution wasn't athletic, it was emotional. He learned how to steady himself when games got heavy, learned how to slow his breathing in clutch moments, learned when to entertain the crowd and when to ignore noise, learned how to uplift teammates with encouragement, learned when to lead loudly and when to lead quietly. His maturity started showing in the smallest details. The timeout huddle, where he grabbed a teammate's jersey to calm him, the moment he pulled a younger player aside after a mistake, the subtle nod to a role player who hit a big shot. LaMelo's leadership didn't look traditional, it looked natural. And as the season entered its final third, one truth became undeniable. The Hornets were only going as far as LaMelo could take them, and he was finally ready to take them somewhere meaningful. Not because he had become perfect, not because he had solved everything, but because he was learning how to channel the chaos inside him into something stable, something intentional, something dangerous. LaMelo Ball wasn't just playing highlight basketball anymore. He was playing winning basketball, and the league felt the shift every time he touched the ball with that same relaxed dribble, head up, eyes scanning for the next moment no one else could see. But he could. LaMelo Ball's rise entered a new phase once he proved he could lead the Hornets in big moments. The doubts that followed him early in his career didn't disappear overnight, but they began to lose weight. With every game, every read, every late clock decision, LaMelo showed a version of himself that was sharper, more deliberate, more aware of how much responsibility he carried. Part two of his story became less about talent and more about transformation, about how a player once defined by highlights evolved into a player defined by control. The shift didn't happen loudly. It started in small moments that only attentive observers noticed. A possession where he slowed the pace instead of forcing a transition pass. A switch he called out early, directing teammates before the opponent even crossed half court. A cut he made not for a shot, but to pull a defender just 2 steps out of position for a teammate's drive. These weren't the plays that showed up in highlight reels, but they were the plays that showed growth, discipline, and a kind of awareness that only maturing stars develop. As the season progressed, LaMelo began reading defenses with a kind of cold understanding. He recognized traps before they formed. He manipulated pick-and-roll coverages by dragging bigs higher or deeper. He used hesitation dribbles not to look flashy, but to create the half-second windows he needed to make perfect skip passes. His feel for timing sharpened. His patience deepened. And with experience came a new version of LaMelo, one who no longer reacted to the flow of the game, but one who shaped it. Teams noticed. Defenses that once played him aggressively began playing him cautiously. They didn't want to overhelp because he would punish it. They didn't want to sag because he had corrected his mechanics and found consistency in his shooting. They didn't want to chase him off the line because he had perfected the floater, soft, high, and nearly unblockable. Every choice teams made came with consequences. And that was the defining element of LaMelo's part two. The consequences he created for defenses. He didn't just attack them, he forced them into dilemmas. One of the signature moments of this phase came in a nationally broadcast matchup against a top Eastern contender. The Hornets were underdogs. The opposing team was deeper, more experienced, and defensively disciplined. Early in the game, LaMelo struggled. Shots rimmed out. Passing lanes closed quickly. The defense crowded him. But instead of rushing or forcing, LaMelo adjusted. He slowed down. He recalibrated. He began probing the defense with patience, picking apart their rotations one drive at a time. A pocket pass here, a cross-court laser there, a lefty finish through contact, a deep three after reading the defender's foot angle. By the fourth quarter, the entire game belonged to him. The arena felt it. They could sense when a player takes full control of the pace. LaMelo didn't celebrate. He didn't talk. He didn't show emotion. He simply orchestrated. On the biggest possession of the night, with the shot clock winding down and the defense switching everything, LaMelo dribbled into a step back from beyond the arc, a shot he had practiced thousands of times in empty gyms. As the ball floated through the air, it felt like the arena was holding its breath. When it dropped, the silence from the crowd said everything. LaMelo didn't flinch. He didn't react. He ran back on defense like it was routine. That's when people understood. The flair was still there, but now it lived inside a much larger foundation: composure. But part two wasn't just about offense. It was about the defensive steps he took, steps many believed he would never take. The Hornets coaching staff pushed him. Teammates held him accountable, and LaMelo responded. He improved his stance, used his length to disrupt passes, timed steals with precision, and fought through screens with more urgency. He wasn't perfect, but he was committed. And commitment changed everything. His growth began showing in the metrics, in the film, and most importantly, in the moments where his team needed stops. There were stretches where he defended the opposing team's best guard and forced them into tougher shots. There were rotations he made instinctively, as if he could feel the play forming before it happened. And there were nights where he stacked steals not by gambling, but by reading patterns, by studying habits, by trusting his timing. The Hornets felt the shift. They started getting stops they never got before. They started crashing the glass with more belief. They started playing with a confidence that only emerges when your star player decides defense matters. And while LaMelo matured, something else happened. The franchise began to stabilize around him. Young players no longer hesitated. Veterans trusted him. Role players played freer. His presence created comfort. His pace created structure. His creativity created opportunities. And as the team improved collectively, LaMelo's leadership began taking on a new form: quieter, steadier, but increasingly undeniable. Late in the season, the Hornets found themselves in a stretch of games that could determine their postseason chances. Historically, these were the moments where Charlotte wilted. Pressure would mount, shots would tighten, decision-making would slip, but this time was different. LaMelo didn't let them crack. He delivered double-digit assist games when the offense stalled. He scored 30 when the team needed scoring. He defended harder when fatigue set in. He controlled chaos with the calm of a player who finally believed not only in his talent, but in his responsibility. One night, after a grinded-out win, a veteran teammate put it simply: he's not just playing point guard anymore. He's running this team. And that was the essence of LaMelo Ball's part two: the transition from highlight star to franchise anchor, the shift from potential to presence, from flash to foundation, from talent to leadership. LaMelo didn't stop being LaMelo. He just became the version of himself that the league always hoped he could be.